Hi, everybody. Nomalanga Mhlauli-Moses here with SuccessfulBlackWoman.com. I'm here with Ro from Man Leads, and she's with her daughter, Grace. Ro, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I want you to say your full name. I didn't even attempt to say it.
My pen name is Ro Elori Cutno.
Ro Elori Cutno.
Yeah, it's also my maiden name.
Okay.
But my legal name is Gonjanois.
Oh, Gonjanois. Okay. So we have so much to talk about, and we can just jump right in. What I did the other day was I had recently heard about you, and I really enjoyed reading some of your posts about, womanhood and by Grace. I enjoyed reading your posts, but I noticed that there was some pushback from your post. So I kind of posted on my wall and I said, there's a woman named Ro, and I see that some of her posts are getting a lot of support and people love them, but I also see that there's a lot of people who have a problem with them. And I said the feminist types, the angry feminist types.
Right.
And I mean, it was a flood. I actually may even at one point go to the post just to show how much response it got. So I wanted to reach out to you and talk to you a little bit more about what you do. How did you feel about that response? Because you saw it.
It's a typical response, actually. I'm just happy that it doesn't have audio. It would have been tragic if I would have had to hear all of those voices.
Yeah. Right. Because some of them were very, very harsh. But I think what I focus on a lot of times with my commentary and with my writing is I focus on the people who were positive, and there were a lot of people who came on there and they talked about how much they love you. They talked about how much they loved your book and they love your commentary. And there were some who even know you in person who spoke very highly of you. And that's kind of what that's what I tend to do with my commentary and my writing, is try to focus on the people who actually are benefiting from what I'm doing. Is that what you kind of do as well to survive?
Yeah, well, the main thing that we teach is called wife school. And the reason that it's the main thing is because women in American culture especially, and now it's starting to seep into other countries, but our women are completely lost, in my opinion, and based on my research and everything that I've seen, when it comes to being feminine.
Right.
And when it comes to understanding what your femininity means for your family. We are convinced, after so many generations of feminism, that our biggest gift to our family is that we work and that we provide money. Mm-hmm. And that we're strong and resilient and all of these things that are the opposite of being feminine. I'm not saying that making money or having money is not feminine under any circumstances, because I've always had money.
I was about to say, because that would make me a man too. If having money and making money is not feminine, then I must be masculine.
Right. But every feminine woman I've known personally and through my research has understood that there is a need to have some type of at least an open door when it comes to making money.
Right.
So that's not, people are constantly just only thinking that the only way to make money is to go outside every day and work like a man. Okay. And that's entirely not true, especially in 2016 when a lot of people work from home. People should know that that's not true.
Well, yes. Just speaking from my own experience, I shared with you just before we went live that I used to be a full-time college professor, and when I was growing up, that used to be my dream job, but it actually turned out to be a nightmare. Um, and I quit that 4 years ago, and have built multiple streams of income, and most of the time, I don't have to actually. I don't remember the last time I left the house and connected it to making money. I make everything that I make through internet, phone, everything, mainly on the internet, and I don't have to leave the home. And my kids are homeschooled, so I'm with my kids most of the time.
Yeah.
So I don't buy into that either. That you have to, fight traffic every day. And then
Yeah.
fight it again in the evening and arrive home exhausted, and then give your husband and your kids the little bit of energy that you have left, and hope that they can get by on those crumbs here.
Yeah. One of the scariest things that I see when it comes to Black women, especially Black women understanding what I teach, is that Black women in America, almost none of us have left America. Almost none. Usually the Black women that have left America have already come from another country.
Yeah, like me.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I try to explain to them what is normal in the rest of the world, they just cannot connect it in their minds.
Right.
And they also think that America is just the greatest, so why do anything different?
Right.
But it's incredibly important to remember that America is great because of slavery.
Right.
And American culture is slavery.
Right.
So in order to figure out how that works for your life, you need to understand that you're being used in a system of slavery, and that will make the country rich, but it doesn't make the family great.
Right. So I personally want to hear a little bit more about you and your message, and what I feel like I've never felt like when I meet somebody like you, there isn't a lot to learn. So I want to get to the learning part and get a few nuggets from you. But I feel like a lot of the people who are resisting your message are almost like this huge distraction that is so annoying. So I asked you, if you'd be willing to kind of just once and for all say what you have to say about the things that they're, throwing mud at you with, and get it out of the way so we can get to the business of talking about the things that you and I want to actually talk about. Right. So one of the things that a lot of the women was saying was they felt like you use Sandra Bland. And for those who don't know who Sandra Bland is, it's a Black woman who died in police custody. And people felt like there was a lot of there were more questions than answers as to how she ended up dead. And to this day, nobody feels like she got justice. That's an accurate summary of what happened. So you kind of talked about Sandra Bland in the context of what your message is. So can you elaborate on that?
The first thing I want to say is that before Sandra Bland was killed, I was constantly saying that women need masculine protection in their lives. Mm-hmm. And that it's a falsity to believe that we can go around defending ourselves because masculine men have a system of a kind of man code between each other. Mm-hmm. And it's based on instinct. It's not based on thought, racism, or anything, not directly, although, racism is a huge factor with Sandra Bland. It's like the main factor. Mm-hmm. But when a man sees that another man values a woman, covers her and protects her in a more than sexual way or a non-sexual way, mm-hmm. that woman becomes a greater value to the man's mind who's watching that.
Right.
Everybody knows from seeing the video that Sandra Bland could not have been helped in that moment. That's obvious. Any man who tried to help Sandra Bland in that moment probably would have gotten shot. As well, right. What I'm referring to is the fact that her family could not raise or did not raise $500 for her to get bail. Mm-hmm. they were accepting it even on the weekends.
When you say they were accepting, you mean where she was being held, the jail or the prison?
It was even on the weekend where they could have come to her rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody showed up.
Mm-hmm.
If Sandra Bland were married, if I were Sandra Bland,
Mm-hmm.
which easily can happen. I've been pulled over by the police in America too.
Right.
I've even been pulled out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There is no way that my husband will let me sit there for 3 days, even if he didn't have a dime.
Mm.
He would at least have become present. Even if he needed to take megabus,
right,
to get from one part of America to the other, he at least would have gotten there.
Right.
There were 3 days.
Right.
After 3 days, I guarantee you that those white people thought to themselves, nobody cares about this one.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Nobody's protecting this one. And feminine protection, no matter how much women want to say they are strong and that they can protect themselves, masculine men do not see that as a threat.
Right.
Masculine men do see that as hilarious.
Right.
There had to have been either a father, a mentor, a husband. And I did another meme about Sandra Bland. If she had a father, she'd probably be alive today.
Right.
I did another meme. That one did not get any attention.
Okay.
So the point is about Black women, especially Black women, need to understand that if Sandra Bland had a husband, she would have used that to her advantage. He would have been there at one point.
Right. Right.
And I said probably she would have been alive.
Right. And just talking to you, I can see that if somebody heard you and listened to what you were saying, I don't see why they would take offense to what you're saying. I think what a lot of people said is that you used her to further a message or something. But the truth is, I think that if you have a message, people can hear it if you're using real life examples. So I don't see what's wrong with that at all.
And I've been around talking about the same subject for a long time before Sandra Bland.
Right.
I also had intense morning sickness and was in Japan when that happened. I did not feel like doing any of that or even discussing anything, but I felt like I had to.
Right.
So none of that was because of me.
Right. Understood. So the other thing is there's another pushback that says, well, this Ro woman, not my words, is scamming people. And I personally, I have experience with this because I work for a Black network. Most of my clients, most of my business partners, associates, and everything are Black people. And what I've noticed is that even though I've said 100 times that I work from home, I build my own income streams, I don't have a job, there seems to be an issue when you give a service and expect to be compensated for the service. And unfortunately, it seems that Black people are much, much more quick to jump on. She's trying to take advantage of me. She's scamming me. She's this. And they're very happy to give their money to white institutions. But when a Black person requires some kind of compensation for the service that they give, it's a problem. So to me, people saying you're scamming them doesn't surprise me, but I'll let you respond to that anyway.
Yeah, it's not a surprising thing everyone can be honest because we know our people and we know our culture.
Right.
I owned a trilingual elementary school in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they bring up is that there are too little, reviews mm-hmm. from prior parents of the school. Mm-hmm. And people who didn't pay. People who I let, whose 3 children mm-hmm. At times. One lady, I let her 3 children go to my school that charged $15,000 a year, all three of them for free.
Wow.
And and it boggles me that she's one of the ones who did a review.
A bad review, you mean?
I'm sorry?
A bad review.
Like, are you kidding me? How much money did you spend using me? I mean, how much money did she save? The other thing is I had to walk away from that school being owed $440,000.
Wow.
Just so that I could save myself. I felt like I was getting sick. There were 3 fathers of the school who came to me and they said, listen, we've been talking for weeks and we are divorcing our wives. And the same thing that they do every day where they come in here harassing you, we have made the connection. They do it all to us. They're destructive. They're never going to stop. They have no respect and no appreciation for how much you try to please them. And after 8 years of trying, I realized that I am not strong enough to please a school full of Black women.
How big was the school? How many students?
We had about 100 students.
Okay, that was a decent size.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's
what is that? Every day I'm telling you, I mean, it would be, excuse me, I need to have a conference with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go and I would fall for it every time. Like, what's wrong? I just couldn't believe each time there was going to be something like this.
That's right.
So my common example is that, I mean, I have had mothers come to me and say, I dropped my daughter off with her hair brushed this way. Mm-hmm. And when I came in school today, it looks like somebody had been doing her hair up like this. Or, I use the soap. It looks like too many children want to use the same bar of soap. Can you switch to liquid soaps? Or else we're withdrawing our children from this school.
And you didn't say please do?
I just believed that if I tried to please them, eventually they would be pleased. And I learned the hard way that you cannot please an angry Black woman. Mm-hmm. So when they come to me and they demand things, like they have been on the internet demanding my marriage certificate. We forgot about that. When they demand things from me, I have to honor myself that I will not give in and give them these things.
Right.
Because I know that I will be hurt in the end. And that they will never be pleased anyway.
Right. So, I actually saw some people demanding your marriage certificate, and I likened it to when Donald Trump was demanding Barack Obama's certificate. Donald Trump knew good and well that Barack Obama was qualified to be president. So him demanding his birth certificate had nothing to do with him validating a genuine question. It was just something that was done to distract, to throw mud. And
also, it's a move used to make the other person seem under you by complying.
Right. Yes. It's control. Yeah, absolutely. And then thank you for pointing that out. So then the last one that you brought up was that, I think, and you can talk a little bit more about that, because you said that there was some issue about people saying that when you match or when you connect women to men, it's because those men are desperate for green cards or something like that.
I think it goes back to the thing where they think that everybody wants to be in America and that America is the greatest.
Right. Or that somebody's always got an ulterior motive, and that motive is negative and bad and is trying to do something to you,
And then I said, listen, first of all, I live in Paris, so I'm matching men who live in Paris.
Right.
We have like the best situation as far as like government care is concerned. Mm-hmm. And that's for everybody. That's not just for people who
born here.
Mm-hmm. If you have a baby in France, France sends you money like, thanks for giving us a baby. Like, it's extreme.
Uh-huh.
And there's free education from age 2 to 26.
Wow.
And there's a nanny if you need one. And
that's free? All of this is free?
Yeah, it's
or subsidized?
Free. It's considered free. I've never seen my husband pay more than like 15 euros or something.
Mm-hmm.
We've had people come to our home to do exams if we feel like our throat hurts. Like, it's extreme. So why? I've been an exchange student host mother for 13 exchange students. And for the ones who came from France, 0 of them wanted to live in America.
So you mean when you were in America?
When I was in America, I was.
And they were coming from France to America. Okay.
They would come to be an exchange student for a year. A year. None of them wanted to live in America. There's no point.
So I've heard, this is a little off tangent, but I've heard a lot of stories about Africans and other people of color experiencing racism in Paris. What's been your experience? Well,
my personal opinion is that there is a place for everyone in the world to be treated well.
Right.
If an African person who has an accent lives in America, they can be treated better than me because the white people know I'm one of theirs. And if an Arab person from the Middle East moves to America, they can be treated white. In some instances, they can.
Mm-hmm.
But in France, Black Americans who have an American accent and speak English, because the Africans that live here, they speak French.
Mm-hmm.
In France, Black Americans get treated very, very well, to the point where it's a level of Black privilege.
Wow, that's very interesting.
And it's not fair. Like, it's that extreme sometimes, where they will pull you to the front of a line at a store and give you champagne to make everybody else stay there. No, it's not fair. But there's a place for everybody. For Chinese people, they cannot get treated well in Japan. It's not fair, but that's how it goes.
It was okay, understood.
Right, but Chinese people can get treated like great in America.
Mm-hmm.
So
perceived and treated well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a quote unquote, the Asian American has for the longest time been the quote unquote model minority. But moving on, so back to the green card issue, the idea that, and I have personal experience with this, which I'll share a little bit about just now. But the idea that if you match somebody or connect a woman who's from America, an African-American woman with a man in France, that man wants to do that just because he wants to go to America. To you sounds funny because you're already in a good situation. So it's like, why would I trade my great citizenship here for that citizenship there?
Right. Look, every person is going to think, okay, maybe it would be an advantage if I had 2 citizenship or something like that, right?
Right.
My husband has not received American citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
He's never applied for it. He does not have a green card. We've not done that. That's not a thing.
Right. And your husband is French, you mean? But he's not American.
My husband says to stop telling people he's French.
Okay.
Because he's not white.
Okay.
But he is French, though.
Right. I understand. He has French citizenship, though.
But he's French Caribbean. But we live in France.
Right? Okay, you live in France. Yeah, but I was just sharing with you earlier that I was born and raised in Botswana, and I came here in my late teens. I went to college here and did almost everything here until I got married. And it's so funny because I had been living here for so long by the time I got married. But when I did get married, I married an American, an African American. And there were people who said, well, she needed that green card. She married him because she needed that green card. And it's, and I only have a handful of friends who know me from the time that I lived at home. And I have American friends who've been home with me, and they were there and thinking, well, why don't you stay here? The weather is beautiful, you know.
Right.
At my mother's house where they visited, you know, my mom has helpers. It's a very decent life. So they were kind of asking me, why would you trade this life for that life? I said, well, because I'm married to an American, and America is where we are, you know, right now. But there's no saying that if circumstances allow it, we could be open to something else. But for now, this is where we are. And so the green card thing is, and it's funny you say that. I do have a green card because you have to have it to live in the United States. But if you didn't have to have it, I didn't. I always treasured my citizenship back in Botswana, because just like how you mentioned with France, free healthcare, free education all the way to university. From the time I was born up until I left to go to school, we had a nanny, maid, gardener. It's bright and sunny most of the year, so it's a great it's a great life. So it's always funny, and it's interesting to hear somebody else say it, because I had a hard time explaining to people that actually I love being in America. I love my husband. I love being here. I love this country because it's been my home for so long. But just understand, this is not the best place in the world necessarily for everybody. There's other places where you can have a wonderful life. So that
also, if you come from another country, you can have a good spirit about America. You can even try to enjoy it. But it seems like a lot of people born in America, they're like kind of depressed.
Because, I mean, and you mean, and black people for that matter, because how could you know the history of this country and not have some kind of feeling about it, you know?
Right.
So
and
that's
it's a sadness, like you are forced to live in a system and they don't even get to travel. I mean, you're traveling, I'm traveling. They don't get to leave and take vacations from America. So it's like a thing where I don't see how you can stay positive and happy with 30 years of living in America.
Right. And not having exposure to anything else. Yeah, I understand. Okay, so we've gotten all that out of the way, and I'm so glad that we did. So now I want to talk a little bit about your book, Man Leads, which I got a preview of. And so far, what I read, I'm already, voraciously taking notes. I've been married for 12 years, but one of the things that I don't mind sharing is that I think that especially when you live here and you're bombarded with so many messages and sometimes bombarded with busyness, as far as marriage goes, sometimes you go off track and you kind of have to come back on track. I've done that a lot.
Like every day.
In dramatic ways. When I remember when I had been married for about 3 or 4 years, I always share that my marriage almost ended. And that's because it was so off track. Mm-hmm. And of course, I ended up doing the work to bring myself back on track. And I think it's a continuous thing, which is why I love your message. It's because whenever your mind and your thoughts and your actions go off track, it's nice to have a very honest compass to bring you back to who you are as a woman, which is how you best operate in life and in marriage. So just a little bit about your book. I'm all ears about what made you write it, what were your thoughts, and what was your process?
Okay, so actually I do not enjoy writing. And I don't consider myself a writer. I consider myself a teacher, a cultural expert. Mm-hmm. I speak 5 languages, and within those languages, and because of the school that I founded, those languages have cultures behind them, and I became an expert in those particular cultures.
What are those 5 languages, if you don't mind me asking?
Japanese, Chinese, French, Spanish, and English.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And they all, I don't know if you speak another language, but that's a complicated subject.
I do, but not Latin-based African languages, other than English. And I can understand a teeny bit of French.
Okay. So those languages have cultures, and because it's not two different cultures that I'm bouncing back off off of each other, because it's several cultures, I had to learn how to have all those cultures work every day in peace in my school. And I also have a very clear idea of what culture means. The teachers in my school all came from another country, and their relationships in their marriages were completely different than the American marriages. And I mean completely different. We are in modern times, and everybody knows that. But the women who came from China, Japan, Morocco, Madagascar, lots of other places, they were all still in touch with their femininity. And they knew how to use their femininity and their position as a woman for the empowerment of their marriage and their family. And it just was the opposite for the American mothers that I saw in my school. Now, I'm from New Orleans, like I was telling you before. Right. And I didn't know. I mean, we have our own culture. Our slavery was French slavery, the only French slavery like that in America. And the way that French law came into Louisiana because of that, right? So you had a baby. We were marrying the white masters, and we were having babies with the white masters. And the law said that the money and the property had to go to those children. And so it changed everything. Right? It changed everything. The way that we operate and have marriage in New Orleans, in our history, within that particular community, is completely French. Wow. It's very French, very French African even. And we have a very long line of successful marriages.
Wow. Yes.
But I didn't, and we also are very traditionally feminine women. All of
you embrace your femininity.
What is it?
You embrace your femininity.
We embrace our femininity. We don't try to we think it's hilarious to try to be men because we know how hard it is. So I didn't know that New Orleans was so different from the rest of the Black people. I just identify with myself as being Black because I look like Black people.
Right.
So when I moved to Atlanta, I wasn't prepared. I just kept relating to the Black women like they were the same as me. Like, oh, if I please them, they'll be appreciative. And it didn't happen. They had British slavery.
Right.
Which was a whole different thing. Now I'm seeing British slavery was, it was a bunch of buck breaking. You know what that is?
Yeah.
It was that. It was a bunch of forced incest, a bunch of, different things that did not happen in the slavery that came from my ancestors. Right. And also my husband, he's from Martinique. We talk about this often. His family didn't endure the type of slavery that happened in most of America.
Wow.
And the same thing happened in Jamaica. That was British slavery,
right.
So there's a type of trauma that I learned has affected most Black Americans because of the type of slavery.
Right.
I'm not saying that our slavery wasn't slavery.
Right. It was slavery.
But it was we had a different outcome. I mean, we were able to keep our families together. We were able to make money and stuff like that.
Right.
Have property, and we have really strong family records, and we don't have a dominance over our children. We treat our children like a type of royalty. This is our way.
Wow.
And I just assumed that was going to be the same. And that was not the same.
Absolutely.
So there was a culture clash between the mothers of my school and me.
Right.
And I actually asked my sister to come help me, but the problem was she's from New Orleans too.
Right. It's so interesting because I think about, you know, the last 2 decades that I've been living here, and I wasn't aware of it, but I felt like I did have to toughen up, you know, in order to survive.
Yeah.
And the reason why I like your message is that I think, and I'm open about this, I feel like in more recent years, especially since being married and being a mom, I've come to really, really understand the importance of actually being a woman and not being ashamed of being a woman, in spite of, you know, you're really bombarded with so many messages,
Right.
and this busyness that comes with surviving in America. And I've always said that, you know, it's important for women to have choices and all this other stuff. But when it comes down to it, if you had a choice, you know, between just being a woman who operates like a woman and being a woman who operates like a man, what choice would you make?
I thought it was an easy choice.
I thought so too. And I learned it the hard way that at the time that I was not operating in my optimal way, it was not because I had made a choice. It was because it was something that I was kind of forced to because I wasn't really paying attention, and I had to find my way back. And I think the same thing with you is, you know, you were in an environment in New Orleans where being a woman was okay. Then you went somewhere else where it seemed like it wasn't, and it can kind of force you into operating in a way that is not natural to you.
Yeah. I mean, the women at the school, they would like expect me to work constantly. And I was like, listen, I don't even work here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, there were employees.
Right.
Who, by the way, I think there was one rumor that the employees weren't paid or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't owe anybody money. They owe me money.
Right. You know, again, with at least this is what I'm learning with being in the public eye, whether you choose to be or not, but here we are, right? I find that the more impactful your message is, and the more people you reach. Is there a kid coming?
No, it's my neighbors going by with like a bunch of baguettes.
Oh, okay. I find that the more people you reach, and the more impactful your message is, the more pushback you get. And, you know, it is what it is. And sometimes they do it with, you know, rumors, gossiping, all this other stuff. And I guess, you know, then you're back to what? To trying to be tough so you can withstand it. So that's why I keep saying it's almost like we get forced into this thing of hardness or toughness or strongness or whatever.
It can happen very briefly. But for me, I'm not tough. I've never had to.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like cry. I mean, I don't care. I just like get sad and go to my husband. You know, it's not gonna, and also I don't have to be tough to make any money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that I have to do.
Right.
There's also another rumor saying that I work and I'm telling women not to work. That's another big thing.
Right.
But the truth is,
I think what they mean is you make money. I mean, not work a formal job, but I think they mean work. Like I work, but I don't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
I think, well, you can make money without working, so.
Right. Can you share how that works?
Well, okay. Somebody contacted me today, like, so sad. You don't think you have to work? You think you need to depend on a man? I'm like, you know what? I've been depending on a man to take care of me, whether I have money or not, since I was born.
Right.
That's called father at the first point.
and okay, so you know we're giggling about it and everything, but you know, for some women they don't have that experience of
That's
actually
very true. And
born into a
talk about
family
this.
with a dad. I was born, into a family with a dad. So when you say that, and I do recognize that maybe my comfort with being protected and being provided for is something I was already born with, because my dad was an excellent protector and provider. Him and my mom have been together for, I don't even know how long. They've been married for 44 years, I think it is. 43 years, and have been together for a couple years even longer.
Right.
So everything about me has been shaped that way. I arrived into a marriage where my dad was already taking care of my mom, and then of course he took care of me, and my dad made sure I had the best of everything.
Right.
And one of the reasons why he did that was he wanted me to carry that with me even after I left his home, to understand that I deserve good things and so on. But what about a woman who didn't have that experience?
That's a really good question, because
she would kind of think you were crazy for thinking that?
Well, that's a really good question, and hopefully we can get the message through, because I address this often.
Mm-hmm.
The woman who didn't have this experience needs to try to authentically learn what that feels like and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not all about her, because if you can create a situation where you can have a harmony with a husband,
Mm-hmm.
and you can enjoy him and not have conflict and be cherished, then you don't have to worry about that for your children.
Right, because your sons are watching your husband as an example, and your daughters are watching you as an example.
Right. So when people are like, I didn't have that, well, you need to get it quickly.
Because otherwise the bad situation is going to...
Right, because then your daughter will be, I didn't have it because my mom was mad because she didn't have it.
Yeah.
And that's not going to work. So, but I'm very, I was very hurt today because someone contacted me and said, I come from a single parent home, and I wish that you would make an exception for people like me.
What does that mean, make an exception?
Well, I was confused, so I asked her what that means, and she said that I said previously that people from single parent homes cannot, that I don't work with them, or they can't be married or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what I said. I specifically said that if you come from a single parent home, you should not marry someone from a single parent home. You have to marry someone at least from a 2-parent home, because one person has to know what a normal dynamic is. What's going to be over in 2 hours? What's a big deal? What's not a big deal?
That's so powerful. So, and I actually, now I have to process that. I'm thinking about that. Because that means then that if you both come from single parent homes, and people get very upset when you say that, because they think that we are saying that coming from a single parent home is like some kind of a disease. But when you come from a single parent home and your partner also comes from a single parent home, neither one of you has the template. I think that's what you're saying, right? They have no concept of what a normal relationship between a man and a woman is. And it's important that the one who does come from the 2-parent home is the role model.
Right.
In the sense that they model what a good relationship is.
Right. They can also say, listen, I don't know everything, but I know that when I was growing up, and this happened between my parents, there was peace in just the fact that my mom didn't make it into a big deal, or whatever the situation.
Right.
I have seen people in single parent homes. Let me plug this in before hopefully this is not working. I've seen people in single parent homes. Oh, there it is. Okay. I need to make sure that let me see.
Yeah, please do that. We don't want you to cut off while we're talking.
Okay, it's working.
Okay.
So I've seen people in single parent homes operate to each other as if they're both their spouse is their parent.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not supposed to do that. The only way it will stop is if one person knows that they're supposed to operate as
A spouse.
spouse instead of a.
How does that look when one person thinks you're their parent? Well,
for men, it often plays out that the men believe that their wife can do everything and work
because my mom did that.
Because their mom did that.
Yeah.
And not realizing that their mom didn't have a husband.
Right.
And that there's so absolutely no way they're going to have sex.
Right, because she's tired. That poor woman is tired.
Like their mom wasn't having sex. Their mom wasn't having sex with a devoted husband who she had to nurture throughout, and to nurture a marriage and a husband and a home and to feed everybody and to make sure everybody was healthy and to nurture people's self-esteem and so forth and so on. You know, a woman who has the support of a husband to do as she needs to keep her family nurtured well, she's going to bring things like spirituality, cultural things into the family. She's going to plan beautiful outings for the family. She's going to make sure people are healthy. She's going to make sure people go to their doctor appointments. She's going to make sure that people have good self-esteem. She's going to make sure that the house is clean and beautiful and harmonious, musical.
And she takes pride in that.
A lot of things. But when you are a single mother, you let yourself believe, because the struggle is hard, let yourself believe that housewife is just cooking, cleaning, having sex, and raising kids.
Right.
And then you teach that to your children because they don't see a mother doing more than those 3 or 4 things.
Right.
So when that man marries a woman, if she comes from a single parent home, guess what she's going to do?
What? Just those 4 things.
And he's going to be unsatisfied. He's not going to know why. They're not going to be having sex. She's going to be tired. She's not going to be cherished, because you can't be cherished if your husband makes you work.
Right.
Women receive love from being adored, and men receive love from being respected.
Yes.
But men from single parent homes don't usually have time. Their mothers don't usually have time or even know how to respect them. They're too tired, and they don't. What kind of examples do they have?
And the other element is sometimes, which is very unfortunate, some children, especially male children, somehow resemble or are similar to their fathers, and the relationship that the mother has with the father spills over into the son.
But if it's a single mother, she usually disrespects her son, and
that's what I mean.
And that's why she's single. Oh yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
She's single because she's disrespectful.
Right.
There's not gonna be a respectful feminine woman on earth who's single past her 30s. It's not gonna happen.
Wow.
So if you have a single mother and she's raising you, it's because she's disrespectful to men, or she's choosing to not be in a relationship, which is hurtful, which makes her angry. Because you can't be a happy woman if you're not being loved. You cannot. So boys learn to be disrespected. And so then they accept all types of disrespect from their wife, who doesn't know any better either.
Right. Wow.
She needs to come from a 2-parent family if he comes from a single parent family. And
let's just quantify that, Ro. A 2-parent family that was healthy and functional.
Well, you know what? Partially, it's not even all necessary. I mean, I know it sounds crazy. It doesn't even have to be for many, many years. There just needs to be a good 7-year time frame where women and men saw as children what worked and what didn't work.
Right.
Even the didn't work part.
That's important too. Right. And, I was going to say earlier when you were talking about, 2-parent homes, that it, not just talking about man-woman relationships, but relationships in general. My observation has been that when I deal with people who don't come from necessarily a situation where they saw people in a long relationship, They tend to think that if there's a conflict, it has to escalate to a nasty level, and then you slam the door and you leave and you never come back and all this other stuff. They kind of sometimes don't know how to process conflict or understand that conflict is part of a relationship, and how you respond to the conflict can actually make the relationship better. So the problem isn't the conflict. The problem is how you deal with the conflict.
Right.
Usually every relationship that I've ever had has been better after the biggest conflict, because that's when you employ the tools of relationship building as opposed to destruction. And unfortunately, I've had the experience of dealing with people who didn't know that conflict didn't mean that it was war. Right. And they leashed a war, and silly me was bringing my little tools of mending, and that's not what they were doing. So I've learned that the way that I function is not the way that everybody else functions. And me as a person, in order to preserve myself, I can't just be in a relationship with just anybody.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that people have been saying all over social media and whatever is that you don't need wife school if you had good parents. Or you can learn that by just talking to some old people who were married for a long time. Right. Neither one of those things are true. Even I learned a ton of things from wife school, because wife school is based on several cultures and the way that those particular cultures pass wisdom about wifehood.
Right.
The best things from their culture.
Best practices, absolutely.
Right. So you can't, even if you had a great family upbringing, you still don't know all the best wife practices.
Oh, of course.
From 15, 16, 17 different cultures that won't touch yours, that you haven't had exposure to.
Right.
So when it comes to the fact that people say that they don't need to learn, this is the golden opportunity of learning how to be the best.
But those same people, Ro, will go and get a college degree.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? Or they'll go take a course on, money or finances, or they'll even take what's that? When you learn how to resuscitate a person, they'll learn CPR. Yeah. They'll get anything, any kind of learning except learning how to be a spouse. And I want to ask you what you think, but my thought about that is, I think, at least my experience living here in America, what I'm seeing throughout social media a lot of times is that people have actually started to devalue marriage to the point that it seems so ridiculous that how.
Here's the thing. I love this question. The first thing to remember, to keep in the forefront of our thought, is that families are supposed to put marriages together because marriages are supposed to strengthen families.
Yes. That's what historically marriage was.
Marriage, the only real purposes of marriage are two real purposes: generational success and personal growth. You can have children. You shouldn't have children without being married, but you can.
Right.
You can be in love and not get married.
Right.
You don't need to get married just because you're in love and you want to own somebody and not let them love somebody else.
Right, I know. So irrational.
Well, you don't need to get married so you can have a party where they worship you.
Right.
There's only two reasons to get married. And the misconception in America right now is that there's this push that marriage is not needed, but there's a push that gay marriage is needed. So if gay marriage is needed, why is other marriage not needed anymore? And we have to understand that this is a power struggle against our families.
Right.
Because your real power is your family. Think about how many Black people have gone to court in America and they didn't have nuclear family representation behind them.
Right.
That affects the judge, just like it would have with Sandra Bland's case. Your value is based on your family.
Right.
And your family, if they're a tight-knit family, which is the whole purpose,
Mm-hmm.
they're behind you when you have health issues, if you have a tragedy, if you have legal issues, when you are passing knowledge, money, information, and any type of other growth down. Each generation is supposed to get stronger and stronger. You're not supposed to start off from scratch.
Yes, I say that a lot. I said one of the reasons why people are poor is they have to start from scratch every single generation, or sometimes not even from scratch. Start from the negative balance and then try to make it to level and then try to build. And then while they're trying to build, then it's a divorce and then it's, chaos again. And then you're starting over. And I've been saying that for a long time.
Right.
Like, there's no way you can move ahead if you have this perpetual destruction and starting over, this individualism.
Yeah. And then, you know what? My parents helped me. I have 6 siblings.
Mm-hmm.
6.
Mm-hmm.
My parents have 7 children. My parents help us the best that they can. They're not going, you need to work for it, because we come from a family, a line of people who your children are not supposed to struggle for what? To prove themselves? What is this, a sorority? A fraternity?
I also come from a family where my parents have helped a lot. However, there's been a balance between, not enabling, but at the same time, not letting you struggle. I've said, that if on any given day, if I picked up the phone and boo-hoo cried, within 24 hours, my mother, my brother, my father, they would be here. And they're all the way in Ghana.
And your husband knows that.
Oh, absolutely. He knows
that affects the way he values you. And
absolutely. And my husband has been home with me to Botswana, and my mother has been here. My dad's traveled the whole world, whatever. But there is something that I once heard that says you don't quite know how to love a person until you see how the people around them love them. So, I have the advantage of having loved my husband's family even before I met my husband. I knew his sister. I was actually living with her temporarily, and then I just absolutely loved the person that she was, and I thought, you know what, I'll marry your brother. So I loved that family even before I knew him and loved him. And the same thing with him is he also has met my family and they love him. You know what I mean? It's not just about me and him. And when there's a rough patch, it's not just me and him, it's everybody,
There is nobody walking out because they're mad or getting too upset or aggressive when they know that your family is not having that.
Yeah, right. On either side.
On either side.
Right.
But here's the thing. For people who don't come from those types of families, you need to create one.
Right.
They need to create one before it's too late, because their children need that and their grandchildren need that.
Right. Yes. I say that too. Funny enough, I say that to my husband sometimes. I'm like, sweetie, on the days where I'm just so mad I don't know what to do with myself, I think about the long range of why I'm here. And the fact that, my mother told me that her mother told her, actually a female relative told her, she says, you come from a family of women who have stayed with their husbands and built beautiful homes. And she said, let me tell you something, no matter what happens, you don't ever leave your husband, because once you do that, that's what your daughter's going to do and your granddaughter and so on and so on. And she says, you find a way to build your home and you teach your daughter to build a home and her daughter and so on and so on. So to me, when I think about it, it's not just about me. It has.
But you know what? That is very good advice. But if you say that to the average American woman, the first thing is going to be, well, what if he's a beater and a child molester?
Right. So answer that, Ro. Answer that.
Because here's the thing, like, especially when it comes to who we help women find for husbands. There's a whole chapter in my book about how to identify a healthy man. Mm-hmm. It's based on research. It's not based on my opinion. Mm-hmm. My research is very, very broad. It wasn't a quick thing to write. It took me 2 years.
Right.
Just to gather the research part. Healthy men have a way that they operate like a science. Masculine men operate based on instinct. And if you find that a man is not operating within these very specific ways, there's no way that you can determine what he's going to do on this day, on that day, with this, on respond to this thing.
Can I just interject something? So the other thing you're teaching these women is discernment, how to discern a good partner before you have this baby and marry him and all these other things.
Right.
Okay, please continue.
Right. And so a lot of women, a lot of American Black women, they didn't get it right the first time. They're catching me after they've already made mistakes. They're catching me after they've had a baby with a man who's not there anymore.
And they don't trust themselves. They don't trust themselves to make the right decision.
Their mother made bad decisions, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to judge people. This is the biggest mistake that people make. I'm here to help people to stop making bad decisions going forward. Right. I'm here to help people build their family success and to become wealthy.
Yes.
So I don't care if you have some children and they don't have a dad and you feel bad about yourself. I'm sorry that you feel bad about yourself, but there is so much you can do.
Right.
If
you're willing, and some are not.
Right. And, like a good example is if you just had some guidance, someone to hold your hand through it, right, you would know that the first month of pregnancy, you need to save $1,000. Mm-hmm. Every single month after that, you need to save $1,000. If you're a woman and you don't have a husband, you need to save some money.
Right.
Because now the next man is going to be like, I got to pay for this other man's child.
Right.
You need to have some money ready because now somebody's going to have to at least adjust to the extra expenses of another man's child. Right. And that's fine. Right. But you can't really throw that on a man who didn't know he had another child coming.
Right.
So even if that money does not go towards, helping your future husband adjust to your child, that money can go to your child. When that child is born, they should have $10,000.
But Ro, what about a woman who can't even make $1,000 a month, let alone put away $1,000?
If you work at McDonald's, you can have $1,000. It's just excuses.
Right.
I'm sorry. If you have a baby shower, you can ask people for some money. But even working at McDonald's, you can get enough money to have something for your child so that you can secure your child's father in the future. That's what we mean when we say dowry. They were getting all upset about the dowry. Why should a woman have to pay any money to a man? Because in traditional African culture, men were marrying virgins with no kids. So don't say the dowry is for you to get.
I actually, my husband paid dowry.
Right, but you didn't have any kids?
I didn't have any kids, And as far as they were concerned, I was a virgin.
There you go. That's what they were saying. Look, okay, this woman, she got, and no, you know what? Your family is your value.
Right.
The way that they treat you, like we were saying before. But there are things that can happen if women knew that they have been brainwashed by American media to just ignore their femininity, to have a baby with someone that they're not married to think about marriage later when you're much older, because Black women do get married, but after childbearing.
Right.
Most Black women get married after childbearing years. And that's not going to help your generational success, because remember, the purpose of marriage is for generational success. Right. However, if you are older and you're finally getting married, there's still something you can do for your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews. Absolutely. There's always something that can be done, but you can't be blindly going, oh, I don't want to learn nothing.
And again, I keep saying it. Why are women willing to learn everything except what I see as the most important thing? And part of it is it's been devalued, and we've been taught that that's not valuable. That's not.
Part of it is because I'm Black.
Well, you have to explain that to me.
If I was a white lady, they wouldn't have no problem. They'd probably give her $3,000.
Oh, do you mean to? Yeah, and that's more of the, the brainwashing, unfortunately. Unfortunately,
it is.
And I did say that. I think in one of the threads, I said something to the effect of, you have to understand also that if you keep saying, let's talk about credentials. Where are this woman's credentials? And I'm saying, well, let's talk about credentials for a minute. What are credentials? Credentials are typically white institutions giving you their information and then bestowing a certificate or some validation on you. And you have somebody here who says, I've studied our cultures, brown people included, and I've gathered that knowledge and that information for you. And here I am, and I want to share it with you. And as with anybody who has done the work, expects to be compensated for their work. That expectation of compensation is fraud, it's scamming, it's this and that. But you don't see that the places that you go for your mind to be brainwashed are the scams. Now I have degrees now, so I've been through that area of my life, and I understand the value of, nobody would have hired me as a college professor without the degrees. They just wouldn't. But the funny thing is, there are people who have built $1 million companies and have taught at the master's level, MBA, with no credentials, because they've proved themselves another way. They've validated what they do a different way. And then they got hired and they did it. And in other fields, where you have chefs and vocational, whatever, they've proved themselves in another way and been validated.
There have been several schools that have asked me to come and work. Well, I don't want to work. So.
Right, I know, right?
But they've asked me to come, and they've actually hired me as a
consultant
contractor for like a 2-week long period. And so I would give my terms, and they would say, yeah, but don't tell anybody you don't have a degree, because this is a school. But they needed my expertise because they wanted to do like cultural things or things, language with children. Absolutely. So that's how it goes. That's just how it goes. At the end of wife school, because wife school teaches the things that go beyond the 4 things that most women know about being a wife. Most American women, when you ask them what are wife duties, they say cooking, cleaning, parenting, and having sex with the husband.
Right.
And I say, okay, that's 4. How many of those do most women do well? Like, most women don't even do those things.
No, they don't. Especially not if they're working. They're too tired. I know firsthand. You're just too tired.
Right.
Or even if you do it, it feels like an extra thing because you've worked the full day.
And you can't do it well if you're tired. Right. And then I say, okay, that's 4 things. But in my research, I have learned that there are over 100 wife duties. And that American women everywhere can only give me 4.
Drop a nugget, bro. Drop a nugget. Now I'm curious. What are those
American women are the worst wives on earth.
Drop a nugget. I want to hear at least one other thing that we're missing.
Okay, so one of the things that is a wife's duty is to raise her husband's social status.
Wow.
It's a very important and complex skill.
In as much as a lot of women I've known in African cultures with no formal education, they completely understand that.
Right. And you just something that they learn from watching, right?
Yeah, from generation to generation. Right.
It's also a wife's duty to nurture people's self-esteem. So if you have somebody in your family that has low self-esteem, you failed on your wife's duty.
Wow. That's so, it's funny because we kind of get that with kids. We do get that we have to, preserve our children and raise their self-esteem, but we don't do it holistically.
Right.
Including ourselves, including our spouse,
Right.
and our family, and our extended family.
Right. Some other examples are rites of passage. It is a wife's duty to make sure that your family has certain rites of passage and tradition.
Wow. Wow. Yes. Yes.
You know? And
because you're the keeper of the home.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah.
In holistic ways, like,
Mhm.
okay, the wife brings spiritual things, brings the spiritual tone. Yes, usually the husband chooses what is the spirituality of the family. In America, women choose that more often than not.
Right.
But it's women who keep up with that.
Right. Yes. Yes. They're the ones that go to church, to the church function. They bring the potluck and all this other stuff. Yeah.
Right. But we have to look at it and make sure we're doing those things across the board for the husband, the children, and the future generation. Right. We can't just stop at the children.
Right. And you know what comes to my mind, Ro, is that you often hear that women who don't want to work and they still want to live a good life are gold diggers. But when you look at it from your perspective and you have 100 things, 100 duties, you're working, not in the sense that you're, fighting. You're doing it. The one thing I talk, because I live in Boston, at least in the Boston area, and the most excruciating thing about living here is the traffic, which I don't personally deal with. But I just keep thinking, why would I fight traffic both in the morning and in the evening, to go somewhere and put my kids somewhere with somebody, and hope they do better than me, right?
Hope they have a good attitude. It's like, okay, listen, if you don't raise your children directly and with enough intensity, you don't have any guarantee that they're going to have loyalty, respect, appreciation.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I say put them somewhere with somebody and hope that person will treat them well, even though I know that person doesn't love them like me.
Right.
And hope for the best. And then if somebody says anything about that, I get angry because I have to go to work.
Right.
And again, I'm very open to admitting that I actually tried that path.
Right.
Earlier on. I used to work full time, and I used to put my kids in school so that the school would babysit them until I could get out of work and then hope for the best, but I made changes, and I'm so happy that I did.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've never risked it. The reason why I even had that trilingual school is so that my children would not have to go somewhere.
Right.
And that they could continue on in their in their multilingual upbringing.
And have schoolmates, a school, but not necessarily away from, absolutely.
Right. So it was like a homeschool type of private school.
Right. Where you kind of brought more kids into your homeschool. I understand. Yeah.
We were in the very center of Atlanta. It wasn't a home at all.
Okay.
But the feeling.
Right. Understood. Right. Yeah, I understand. Well, listen, Ro, we've gone over for an hour, and I know because there's so many great things to talk about, we could go on and on. I'd certainly love to have more conversations with you if you're open to that. And we can just kind of hang out, chat about great things, and share the information to those who are willing to hear it. And I think there's a lot to learn from you, but I think also I'd like people to know how to get a hold of your book. And if I'm interested in wife school, what should I do? Where should I go? Can you tell us that?
Yeah, we have a website called Roots of Royals.
Roots of Royals.
So basically, that means that you need to create roots so that your family becomes royalty.
I'm just jotting that down again.
And it's Roots of Royals with an S at the end. She can come. rootsofroyals.com. And Wife School is there, and the book is there.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, Grace. She got some teeth. I can't remember if we said it on the recording or before the recording. I also have a 9-month-old, and I'm actually surprised I went this long without him coming in for some milk.
I know.
But it's been a pleasure, Ro. It was so great to meet you. I'm so impressed with your work. I love what you're doing, and I know it can get hard, and hopefully just continue. I just want to say to everybody again, you can find Ro at rootsofroyals.com. That's where you can get her book. That's also where you can sign up for wife school. And the other thing that I wanted to mention before we sign off, Ro, is that there's also a husband school.
Yeah,
correct.
We call it Husband Summit.
Husband Summit.
Because
and
then we'll feel disrespected if we say, you need
school,
to be
school, right? Great point. So there's also a husband summit, and is that information available at rootsofroyals.com?
Yeah, we currently have actually changed over wife school so that people can now receive the recording, because it started to feel like work and I don't work.
Okay. Okay, great. So thank you, Ro, for this conversation. Stand by just for 1 minute, okay, Ro? All right.
Okay.
So thank you, guys. Again, my name is Nomalanga Mhlauli-Moses with SuccessfulBlackWoman.com. Thank you for joining us. And you stand by, Ro.